Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're checking in from. My name is Aiman Akhtar, and I'll be streaming for you guys today. 3D printing in ZBrush, ideas to reality. Give me a second, and I'm gonna just double check the audio on this stream. Check the audio on this stream. You might hear double audio for a second. That's working on ZBrush Live. Double check on Twitch. And double check on Twitch. Yeah, it is working. Sweet. Alright, so audio is live. Let's test the music. Let's come over to Pretzel here. An application I'm using for sound. And let's pick a channel. Like ambient music. Alright, and I'm going to keep this pretty low. But if you guys and gals are getting annoyed by the music, let me know and I'll change the track or lower the volume. Let's check how this sounds on Twitch as well. Let's check how this sounds on Twitch as well. Let's check how this sounds on Twitch as well. Let's check how this sounds on Twitch as well. Let's check how this sounds on Twitch as well. Let's check how this. Why is it repeating so much? What the hell? That's so strange. That's so strange. That's so strange. I guess it kind of goes for a constant loop. Alright, but it looks like it's working. I am also live on the Restream chat. Restream lets me chat with you whether you're chatting from YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. So, alright, we have our first comment. Aditya Sharma, hello to you as well. Okay, got about 37 people viewing on Twitch. I think that's plenty to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to get started with my usual quick intro, a couple of minutes, and then we'll get started on today's live stream. So my name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist in Los Angeles. Alright, this music is already a bit annoying to me, so next song. And if you want to see more of my work, it's live on aiman3d.com. So I'll just drop that in the Restream chat as well, if you want to check it out. Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of 3D printing here, costumes, large-scale sculpture, small-scale stop-motion animation. Even started my own 3D printing company where I help people get their ideas from 2D to 3D. So there's a whole section in my website called 3D Printed Sculpture. You can check out all that stuff. I like to make outfits for my corgis sometimes. Alright, cool. So that's that. My biggest project recently is Fungisaurs. It's my own IP that I'm building with my wife Fa. It's our little dinosaur mushroom hybrids. And so this is what I'll be working on today. I'm kind of coming up with a short story pitch idea for this stuff, and then also a TV series and all that. So it's all just development right now, but if you're interested in following, there's toys, there's a game we're developing right now, and an animated series. So hopefully lots more to come on this stuff. And you can follow us on Instagram at Fungisaurs. Alright, that's going well. Okay. Next up, if you go to pixelogic.com, ZBrush Live Presenters, you can check out all of these awesome streamers on here. And if you go right here to the blue shirt, that's me. So there's some of my work you can see over here. All sculpted in ZBrush. There's the Fungisaur's prototype for the toy box. We did Kickstarter that and have those for sale live now on Fungisaurs.com. But the point of bringing you here is you can check out all of my previous streams. So if you're interested in learning about 3D printing, you can just tune in for free to any of these ZBrush live streams and check out my process as it evolves and my development process for this IP that I'm building. For the past few weeks, we're working on a character for the short film. So let me do a recap of that, where it ended up. Did everyone already see Avengers Endgame? Am I the only one who's still excited about it? Alright, I have no problem with spoilers during my streams, so if anyone wants to talk about Endgame, let's do it. Okay, so this was the development of the character for my short film. I started out with kind of a Red Riding Hood kind of motif. Tried out some different colors because I wanted to be like a South Asian girl. Tried out a few different looks, different ways to wear her scarf and headband and dupatta is what we call it. This is what the original character concept was based on, and I wanted to create a younger version. And we were talking last week about all of the Disney princesses and all their looks tend to look very similar in a sense, like the style for Toon has been set by Disney. But I wanted to experiment, and so we did. Came up with a new sketch idea to kind of go off in a different direction. I haven't tried sculpting that in the previous stream, and actually before I show that, this is kind of where we ended up 2 streams ago, where it was kind of, or maybe this was last stream, trying like a simplified version and a more Disney-esque version, and where I ended up with it was something like this. Now this is rendered in Keyshot with some Toon shading lines on it, but it's kind of a mix of the two, a simplified and a realistic style. I've got a render here. There. So that's the render without any outlines and such. So I'm going to continue working on this character, but not in today's stream. Today's stream is about the world surrounding this character. So there's got to be a bunch of Fungisaurs in this short. Here's the simplified version. And you can see my little paradox there, unless it's blocked by the screen. So that's one of the little Fungisaurs, and the whole short would be about these 2 characters interacting. And I don't know, I'll just keep developing it. But what I also want to do is develop kind of the ending for the short. And the ending, I picture this one all grown up and they get bigger exponentially. So a bunch of these guys, and then maybe also other ones. So that's what today's about. I'm going to take this character in ZBrush, open it up properly. Alright, so this is my Salamander Fungisaur, and I'm going to just age it. So this is the first, one of the first Fungisaurs I made, and this was back in 2016, or maybe even earlier. And I made some changes before we went to mass prototyping for this. Like I wanted it to be a bit cuter, so this is the final model, where I made those eyes a lot larger. And it doesn't have textures because this was mass produced. This was injection molded, and so didn't need any color on here. But we're going to start with this one as a base because we've already got it. Looks like it's already been Dynamesh, so these eyes are merged with it, which is annoying. But we'll open up another one and grab the eyes from that, and that's going to be what I'll be working on in today's stream. Alright, let me double check if you all have any questions over here. Alright, nope. You got some hi, cool. Alright, so a little bit about a Dimetrodon. It's not really a dinosaur. It came, I don't know, a few million years before actual dinosaurs did. 40 million years, some people say 50 million years before the appearance of the first dinosaurs. It's similar to dinosaurs, that's why we kind of grouped them together. But this was a long time ago. Non-mammalian synapsids, a group traditionally called mammal-like reptiles. So Dimetrodon actually may have been one of our earliest ancestors as humans. Let's take a look at what they look like. You've got that big head, the trademark sail, and depending on the reference, the legs are either beefy or not beefy. So I'm going to keep these references off to the side on my other monitor as I work. It's always important to have reference for a 3D artist. I guess the key is just as they get older, that profile kind of blends together. And that's what I have to work on in mine. Yeah, because every time you look at them, they have that signature profile. Now, obviously, I'm looking at images on Google, not necessarily the most reliable evidence, but there is some good pictures of skeletons. So we're going to keep all of these open on the other monitor. And before I get started with that, next song. Before I get started with that, usually I do a little bit of show and tell. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I did a 3D printing project for a client just this past week. So this is John Burton's Designs. He runs a YouTube channel called Carbot Animations and sent me these characters to sculpt and make in 3D and get them ready for printing. So I did just that. I sculpted them in 3D, keyed and parted them out so that they'd be easy to paint, because you can see they're pretty simple, like flat colors, like that. So sculpted them in ZBrush, got them keyed and printed, and then basically set them up in Preform. That's our print prep software for the Form Labs, and let them print. And then I've gotten done, and I can show you what they look like. Give me a sec. So to kind of show you one character at a time. Lighting's not necessarily perfect, but you'll get an idea of what they look like. So this is the finished piece. So you can do this kind of thing with 3D printing in pretty much a week or less. So this is a simple character, obviously, but there's one. Here's another one. Little tiny guy. It's cute. I've got to come up with a better way to show off stuff on camera. I think I'll actually just start taking photos and showing those, or video. But it's good to see it in webcam form too. So these characters range in scale. You know, some of them are really small, and some of them are bigger. But it's fun to be able to do a project like this, and you know, none of these existed last week. They weren't modeled, they weren't digital, they weren't 3D printed, and now they do. So if you want to prototype your own toys, you can learn to do stuff like this relatively quickly. The fun part, let's see if I can hold them up. Is that I made 4 of each character. Alright, this is going to be kind of hard to show without dropping. So there's 4 of each character, so I've got like a bunch of these characters now. I think John will be giving these away on YouTube for his 1 million subscribers. So if you want to follow that or get a chance to win one of these characters, it's going to be Carbot Animations. So Google Carbot Animations and then subscribe, and you may win one of these guys. Little plug for him. And that's the show and tell for today. If you are interested in learning how to do this kind of thing, the last thing I'll say is you can go to Mold 3D Academy, and if you go under all classes, there's a self-paced class, 3D printing for ZBrush artists. That is my own class, and you get 8 lectures for $200 that basically give you all of my knowledge of 3D printing. So you'll learn 3D printing for small scale, large scale, miniatures to concept art. You're going to learn jewelry, fashion, wearables, articulation, keying, slicing, hollowing, all that stuff, all that good stuff is in here. So I'm going to drop a link to that in the, where's the other window? In the Restream chat. If you're interested, you can check that out. Ah, darn. I did that whole thing without any, with the screen being big. Alright, repeat. So, Mold 3D Academy, 3D printing for ZBrush artists. If you scroll down, you can see all of the work that my students have done. And there's 8 weeks worth of lessons. So if you're interested in learning everything I know about 3D printing, you can take that class. Cool. Alright, so Avengers, who hasn't seen it yet? Someone raise your hand if you haven't seen it yet. I may not do spoilers this week, but next week if you tune into my stream, I'm doing spoilers. Actually, next week I'm going to be at Formlabs HQ in Boston. So, how do I do this? I want to show you guys some stuff. Alright, so Formlabs just came up with a new printer, the Form 3, and they have their user summit next week, the Formlabs Summit. So I'm going to go check it out in person, see if I'm going to get one. And if you're interested in getting one, you can use my referral code Form3-S3RV8R for $500 off. So the printer costs $3,500 and you're getting it $500 off. So it's a solid deal for probably the best in class desktop 3D printer there is for stereolithography. That's high resolution printing. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Let's see. I wonder if I have the image of the... no, I don't. Darn. You can quickly Google it. Form 3L. So the Formlabs also came up with another printer called the Form 3L, which is the largest SLA printer that they've come up with before. And so you can get a sense of the scale. It's much larger than the Form 3 that's next to it. So I might pick up one of those, but we'll see. Alright, let's get started with today's stream. First, let me check if you all have any questions. Alright, Restream, we got a question. What's the maximum poly count for 3D printing? Alright, good question. So this depends on your printer, your print prep software, and also on, I guess, just the RAM in your machine, how much you can work with. So what I tend to do is work under 1 million polys for any print that I do. Now this is not a hard set stone rule. The reason for maximum poly count in 3D printing is that oftentimes you're going to have to export your file as an STL or an FBX or STL primarily. Even OBJs work, but STL or OBJs, you're going to plug those into a print prep software. Oftentimes with a lot of older printers, those get exported out as a G-code file, and that G-code file has a certain file size limit, and that gets put on a USB, physically on a USB or an SD card that gets plugged into a printer. So that's the limiting factor. If you're not dealing with one of those printers, then you can work higher poly, but the print prep software themselves will start having trouble after 1 million polys. So the two software that I use most often is Preform, which is opening up right now, and Idea Maker. Alright, so Preform here, you can basically choose your material, which version of that material you're picking, and you've got a space to work in. And you can import in models. You can just open and click on any of your OBJs, STLs. Actually, yeah, that's what I was going to do. OBJs, STL, .form files, and that's primarily what you're going to work with. ZBrush also has a pretty nifty automatically send to preform button, and that works pretty well. But I tend to work under 1 million polys for any single preformed scene. Or any single OBJ. Scene can be a few million polys, but as long as each OBJ is around 1 million or less, it tends to work out alright. Good question. Alright, we got Ze Sinara Kitsune. Hey, what's going on? Thanks for joining again. Alright, I love it when it does this. Actually, if you guys want to see something cool, let's check this out. This is OBS, the screen recording software, and I love that mirror effect that happens. Okay, enough trying to make you sick. Let's get into ZBrush and let's get started in today's stream. Okay, so if you have any questions, just shout them out on the chat. I'm going to shrink this window down a bit. so you can see more of my interface. Yeah, basically the only things that are hiding here are depth slider and the lighting, which I don't use that much. Let's open up the Dimetrodon reference, have that off on the side. And let's also load in one of my other Fungisaurs. Let's see, where would that be? Older Paradox? I think this would be it. Maybe, perhaps. I want to grab a pair of eyes that I can reuse. So this is basically what we're going to be doing in today's stream, is I'm taking this character that we've got, a small version of, like a baby Fungisaur, and I'm going to come up with the older version of it. Now these are all dinosaur mushroom hybrids, and so scale is a factor. They start out like a spore, they land wherever they land, and then they grow a little mushroom, and then that mushroom starts popping off and walking around. Now this, every day, gets larger in size until it becomes a full-grown, 20, 30-foot dinosaur scale character. That's the basic idea for my story. And this is what we'll be doing today, but with this character right here. Alright, so I'm going to grab the eyes from this character and append them in here. Let's see, yep, there they are. Alright, so we'll come back to that. First thing I want to do is probably work on the latest model as far as, I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter because we're going to change it up so much. The older version is probably going to look similar to this with the smaller eyes. The baby version has the bigger eyes. But I'll have to make some noticeable changes. Right now the character's neck is kind of up higher than the rest of the body. And if I look at most Dimetrodon reference, not that upset, the neck basically goes straight down. So you've got the sail and then right into the head. So the character is going to have to evolve a bit as it ages. And that's what we'll be working on today. That's a good reference for the scale. Full-scale Dimetrodon is about the size of a human. Pretty big. Okay, so I've duplicated my model. I'm going to Dynamesh it. So go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and I don't know what my resolution is, so I'm going to try Dynameshing really, really low poly first. Alright, that's not going to work, too low. Let's try 200-ish. Looks like that worked. It's about 3.4 million polys. A bit much for what we're doing. Let's take it down to 100-ish. Alright, so we got about 1 million polys here. It retained the color information, and we can start pushing and pulling. So I've got my Wacom pen here. I'm going to go with my mask lasso tool. You can just access this by clicking Control. And I'm going to select that head. I'm going to zoom in here and Control tap so that mask gets a bit feathered. I'm going to move this down, say to about there. Switch to my Move tool, Move Brush. We can try to kind of get that head feeling right, like it's coming from the body. Let's see what happens with X symmetry turned on. It's not really a symmetrical character, so that might not work really well. But we can try it. And I think I'll not use the symmetry. Like this character has a bit of a crest up at the top of it. We'll try to pull that out. This one will be one of the easier ones to age, I think. It's already pretty well set up for it. I'm going to switch to my inflate brush. Just inflate this, fill it in a bit. Inflate again. So the good thing about concept creature sculpting is I can do fun stuff like this, like give him suction cups for feet. Now you'll notice if I go to the max size for my draw size, that's about as big as it goes. So if I want to make any larger scale changes, I'll have to actually do something fun. I'm going to go to deformation and size down my entire model. That way my brush size can be as big as I want it to be. And I can make larger scale changes. I'm going to raise that head a bit. And I'm definitely going for a stylized character, so I can have some fun with it. Just play with these proportions a bit. And whenever I'm ready to Dynamesh, I can Dynamesh again. Now, you'll notice Dynamesh behaves differently now that I've scaled my character, because Dynamesh is dependent upon the scene scale. So now that I've lowered the resolution, lowered the scene size, I'll have to increase my Dynamesh size. Let's try around 600. Yeah, so it went exponentially. So it was around 100, so now I had to like 120-ish, so I had to take it up to almost 600 in order for it to retain almost that same amount of like 1 million poly resolution. Now 1 million polys is a bit much. I don't need that much. Just try to take it down a bit. Yeah, that's better. Let's pull up some different reference. There's some fun references here. Alright, there's this one that I'm looking at in particular is interesting because it has a kind of drooping skin under the neck of the character, which I like. It's generally shown with some sort of drooping skin, like there. But I want to have some fun with it, and I like that actually. I like those the rows of kind of like a beard almost. But that's a fun idea. Let's see if we can play with that a bit. Yeah, I feel like it adds something for sure. You can hear my dog Kuma barking in the background. I don't think there's ever been a stream where he hasn't barked at least once. Doing his job, you know? Dogo's got to protect us. Alright, looks like they have kind of ear holes, so I'm going to have to put that one in, like right there. Pretty far back on the head. Let's check out a skeleton. Yeah, hard to tell from a skeleton where those ear holes would be, because in a skeleton it looks like there's an ear hole right behind the eye, so maybe I have to move it forward. Yeah, and some people skip doing the ear holes at all. They just don't even do it. I don't know. I think it needs some. Look how epic this painting is. Someone had a lot of fun making this painting. Okay. So I'm going to move those ear holes a bit forward. I might try to hide them within wrinkles or something. Okay. Hope y'all are sculpting something as well as you watch me go through mine. I'm always encouraging people to try to build their own thing, their own IP, their own stories. So, what kind of projects are y'all working on? I'm curious. Shout it out in the chat, and I'll take a look. I'm going to rotate the whole thing a little bit. And what this will do in effect is allow me to have the character seem taller. Try to mask select that arm, and unselect anything I don't want to have selected. Masking is a really powerful tool to work in ZBrush, so if you don't do it, I highly recommend you incorporate it into your workflow. To give it a bit more well-defined anatomy. Not a ton, just a little bit. Kind of like how beefy this character is, so I might keep that. And no one's gonna mess with this character. Make sure to look at it from all angles. That's the whole point of 3D. Now you've got to make sure that what you're making looks good Not just from one side, but it's a sculpture from all sides. I'm gonna try to incorporate that beard, see what we can get. Switch to the pinch brush. Try to pinch some of these together. Maybe kind of get like an alignment for the jaw. Like there's the center jaw line. Then there's the sides. Give some flair to those nostrils up at the top. Try to line those up as well. So there's a pretty distinctive kink in the jaw of a Dimetrodon. Looks like almost every, representation of Dimetrodon has this kink in the jaw because it's part of the skull. So I'm going to try to add that in as well. Let's see. It'll change the shape of it for sure. But let's see. I'm looking for some good reference. Meanwhile, check on Google or check on the Restream chat. This Scenario Kitsune is saying reptile ears are just holes, says Google Images Search. Yep, no, that's true. Well, it depends, I guess, on what reptile. Alright, we got a question from Nick Gunn. Hi, is the resin the best to print for high detail for miniatures around 30 millimeters? Yeah, I'd say resin is probably the best option for miniatures. I'm going to show you guys something, quick segue. So for those of you that are interested in miniatures, for the past year I was working at a company called Sky Castle Studios, and they make HeroForge.com. So this was the project that I was working on for almost a full year. And HeroForge is a site for customizing miniatures. So if you're interested in making your own kind of like 28 to 38 millimeter characters, this is a good site to let you understand how miniatures work. So you can pick your race, you can pick your scale and body type, you can pick your character expression, really mess with that. You can get as, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, specific as you want to get. But you can pick really strange character types. Like here's a skeleton, for example, and you'll notice there's no spaces in the skeleton and everything's a lot thicker. And that's because that's what you need as a bare minimum to 3D print, especially at this scale. So you can pick whatever outfits, stuff you want. Put that outfit on. Some of them don't match up amazing, but most do. Let's see, pick some outfits for the legs. Skirt it is. Nope. Chainmails, gauntlets, or shogun pants. You could change the poses. Let's give him a sword or something. Side items, handheld. There we go. Arak, the Dothraki Arak. And you can even put him on a mount if you want. So there's a rabbit riding a horse in a battle. So this is a good example for you all to know how to model for miniature scale. Look how thick that sword is. That's basically what you're going for. You need to understand what your minimum thickness is for 3D printing, and then you can print, sculpt for it. So the detail has to be really exaggerated. You can't do small detail, like skin wrinkles and pores don't show up at that scale. So make sure to look at a lot of miniatures, look at a site like this to understand how to sculpt for miniatures. All right, enough of that. Back to it. Yeah, good question though. Resin is the best material to print for miniatures that I've found so far. Because resin can go down to like 25 microns, and that's, basically 8 microns is the length of a blood cell. So that's a good way to think about it. 25 microns is really good. Form 2 and Form 3 can go down to that. All right, another question here. What's a good workflow for creating scales? That's a good question. Let's add some scales to this character. I'm going to have to adjust the legs and anatomy and stuff still, but let's take a segue. I'm going to save this on the desktop. Salamander older. All right, and then I'm going to switch to just a clean scene, and let's make a scale. So I'll start with the sphere here, go into edit mode, make it a poly mesh so I can sculpt on it, and I'll go to the move tool, my transpose brush, just kind of move it back in place like that. So that gives us the starting point for a scale. And you can make this scale really however you want to. I'm gonna go to my, leave Z transform, nope, it'll be Y. Yeah, that's it. And I'm going to increase the base of it so it's wider at the base than it is up at the top. Let me go to my pinch brush, just pinch around the edge. Now, since I'm talking about 3D printing, what you have to understand about 3D printing is oftentimes it just meant to look like a scale. So that means you can have the bottom be pretty thick. If you're making an actual scale, I mean, you might want to, like, clip it. Something like that. But for 3D printing, you want to leave no space. You want to kind of bury everything. I'm going to do something like this, and that'll be kind of the base for my scale. Not that much, yeah. Now you can really dress up the scale as much as you want, but I'm making a stylized character, so I'll keep it simple. I'll come to the top view. I'll go to Create Insert Mesh Brush in my brush palette. Say New, and I'll go back to my character. And now using that Insert Mesh Brush, I can draw on that scale. So that's a good workflow for making scales. Now you'll notice a lot of these scales are just floating on top of the character. They're not buried in. So let's undo. What you have to do is go to the brush slider under depth and push that depth down. That's going to adjust how that scale is drawn on the surface. So now when we draw it, you can see that whole top of the scale is buried. And because it's really nice and smooth at the bottom, that'll print really well. Another thing you can do to make this easier, you could make a patch of scales and just use that as an insert brush, or you could go to, I believe under stroke, let's see, is it curve? I think it's curve mode. Let's try that out. And you can put a bunch of scales in a row in kind of a curve form. Drop that, do it again. Drop that, do it again. So you can kind of make it easier for yourself rather than draw all those scales one by one by one. So I might actually end up using these scales on this character, but in a bit. Let's go back to first just adjusting the large scale proportion. We want to work large to small. Alright, another question. Okay. Tim the Ancient on Twitter is asking, I know you usually have your Formlabs printers in the background. Have you tried Anycubic or OneHow SLA printers? For those of us on a more restricted budget. For sure. Now, I like Formlabs, and the reason I talk about them, they're not paying me to do this. The reason I recommend them is because they have a good customer service. When you're starting off in 3D printing, you're going to have a lot of failures. You're going to have a lot of problems that come up, and it's really important to have a good customer service. So I know a lot of people back printers on Kickstarter that are relatively cheap. I've done that myself, and sometimes they don't get delivered. Tico is the one I ordered and I didn't get. But I have heard good things about Anycubic and OneHow SLA printers, both of them. I have a friend that just bought the OneHow. Anycubic, I've had many people tell me that they're solid printers. So if you're interested, yeah, I'd recommend checking those out. I haven't tried them personally, so I can't talk about them personally. But there is this one thing that I recommend checking out. 3D Hubs puts out a printer guide every year. So looks like there's 2018 one is here. Don't know if they have a 2019 one yet. But you can check out the best printers on each category. So this is based on people that have these printers, and they do a pretty thorough breakdown of the costs, the pros, the cons. I have this one, the Race 3D N2, but I have the N2 Plus, so it's 12 inch by 12 inch by 24 inches. The Form 2. So these are the prosumer ones. If you want to go down to budget, you can scroll down and check this out. And you can really see all these different printers here. The Rockstocks, the Creality, really popular FDM machine. You can build it yourself, and I believe it's like, yeah, less than 500 bucks. Yeah, this one's 220. So, and this one's great for, you know, small scale printing, miniature printing. But I think it's still FDM, yeah? Looks FDM, yeah. SLS also here, which are a lot more expensive, $175,000 printers. So these are not really desktop printers or printers for the public. But yeah, I recommend, you know, check that out. I do usually have my printers in the background. They are actually right there. I'm just trying a different orientation for my room. Yeah. Oh. Camera moved. I'm gonna double check that it's looking right. Cool. All right, let's get back to the sculpt. And yeah, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. Kind of like having like knobby elbows. This character gets older. Also makes it easier for animators because you know exactly kind of where the elbow is because it's so knobby. You need to do the same thing for the rest of these. Mask, refine mask, feather mask, and rotate into place. This one's pretty close to the floor already, so I'm just going to try to rotate it. That should be good enough. Neat. Let's fix the tail. The tail's now penetrating through our imaginary ground plane. Had a very LA experience the other day. I went to my local art store to pick up some paints for painting on those cardboard statues, and I saw Natalie Portman. She was walking by with her baby. That kind of thing happens in LA. And I told the store clerk, I think I just saw Natalie Portman in front of your store. And she was like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. She lives in this neighborhood and comes there to shop. Alright, that's looking good. Start fixing this, giving this character back some pelvis. Okay, I'm gonna have to lower this entire foot somehow. I'm gonna feather that mask a lot. Just using the transpose tools to get it where I need it. Then we can select that arm. Feather that and move that down. Important to work with perspective mode turned off at first, so you can imagine the correct ground plane. Now I imagine when this character is like a little tiny Fungisaur, you can kind of even scale walls with those suction cup feet, but as it gets older, that kind of stuff becomes a lot harder because it's got a lot of bulk. So I want to make it really bulky. Just taking a look at it from a lot of different angles as I make these changes. Make those ear holes less pronounced. Don't want them to be so prominent. Go. Okay, so let's take a look at comparing this with the younger version of this same character, the Dynamesh. Again, these turkey tails looking right. Turkey tail is an interesting mushroom. They say that you can get cures for everything that ails humanity out of nature. And turkey tail is one of those that they are claiming has cancer curing properties. Now, I'm not endorsing this whatsoever, but it's interesting that nature does have a lot of cures for things if we don't destroy it. Alright, there. That's looking right. Chesty chest. Let's go ahead and scale them up. Go to deformation. Or let's turn on the other one so we know how far to go. Actually, you know what? No. I'm going to scale down the other one. I'm going to duplicate that. Go to deformation. Size that down. This will give us a good idea of how this character's look changes as it gets older. Really try to push that beak. I'm pretty sure this character didn't have a beak. I mean, this dinosaur or this creature when it lived back in the day. That's one thing we can do for concept stuff is exaggerate. Now, since I do have that scale brush we developed, I think I will try adding some scales on this character. But first, I'm just going to add some random notches. I'm seeing these in the bottom of a lot of reptiles. See if this helps or hurts the character. Yeah, I think I like it. Now, one of the prominent features of this character is the length of that scale. So I'm going to try to scale that scale up higher. That's probably overdoing it. But you always want to stretch it beyond what you think. And then bring it back down. Alright, let's add some scales and some more details to make this character seem a bit more larger than life. Okay, got a few more questions to answer. Numerumi saying, where can I find a definitive list of manufacturing guidelines? Example, minimum thickness. So this doesn't exist. There's no clear guide for what you're trying to make. Oftentimes it's depending on what you're trying to make. So if you're trying to make something and first prototype it for 3D printing, the best resource is simply Shapeways. Because if you go to Shapeways, you can upload your model and check it for a lot of different types of materials. Shapeways has a pretty extensive material library. Look up materials. Alright, so you can see they've got versatile plastic, steel, TPU, whatever the heck that is, platinum, gold, silver, new plastics, bronze, brass, I said brace, aluminum or aluminium, sandstone, and you can check for each of these materials has their own different minimum thickness. So once you load up a file and then check it as these various materials, it'll tell you what the minimum thickness should be. Let me log in for a second. Let's see. I haven't uploaded models on here in a little bit, but I should have some old ones. Let's see here. Alright, so here's one of the Fungisaurs that I uploaded a while back. Alright, so we got a few more questions. Is SNR considered a $175,000 printer? What does it print? Transformer parts? Maybe. No, I think it's just the technology and some printers that are that expensive, the supports are non-existent, or they're printed in a different soluble material and you can just wash them off, so it's very easy to not have to clean supports. Numirumi is saying jewelry printers like SolidScape are 30 to 50K. They look like desktop printers. People are willing to pay for them over 3K for the Formlabs printer. So yeah, the Formlabs is the best in class for a desktop printer. There are EnvisionTEC printers that are stereolithography or DLP, I think it's called, digital laser projector printers, and I think it's DLP. Anyway, so there's a difference because they can use a whole projector surface and do a whole layer at a time, whereas Formlabs has to do kind of laser bit by bit by bit. And the EnvisionTEC printers, I've used them for when I was working in stop motion. They're very clean. Like the supports just melt off, and it's much easier to clean. So for jewelry, Formlabs is great for prototyping, but there's a lot of cleanup that still needs to be done by hand. So yeah. Anyways, back to Shapeways. So here's my model, and this is one of my earlier Fungisaurs, the Stegosaurus one that I wanted to do. And I've loaded this up in here, and you can test based on material. So say I want to do it at sandstone, full color, because that's what we're trying to do. You can go into the tools, I believe under tools, 3D tools, if that sounds right. And here you can test the wall thickness. So it'll tell you based on each material that you're choosing what the minimum wall thickness is. So you can do this for different metals, you can do this for all sorts of things, and it'll highlight in red any area that's too thin. So you can see with this one, I've already run this test and made sure that even my thinnest parts are thicker than the minimum wall thickness. So say if I scale this character down, let's say to 0.5, then you'll start noticing, likely, that it's going to start showing a lot more areas that are too thin. So give this a second to analyze and figure it out, and we'll come back to it. Let's go back to our model, and let's start adding more details. Okay. I'm looking at various different Dimetrodon references online and just trying to constantly update. Yeah, some of them do this weird line all the way down, but I don't like that. A lot of them actually have like the skin wrinkles kind of coming down along the sides of the mesh. Continuing all the way up into the tail. So we might do something like that. Looks like it goes over the back leg, under the front leg. I'm gonna effectively continue that same thing we started on the neck and just add more nodules everywhere. More detail also implies scale. So when this character is larger, we want it to have more detail than when it was a baby. I'm just using the damn standard brush for this and holding Alt when I add these nodules. So this one has a really interesting, this one reference that I'm looking at has a really interesting take on it, which is that it's got a lot of scales up along the top. And we can do something like this. We can add these scales in place. So I might do like sporadic scales like this, not like all over the body, but just in key areas. Some of these are really low resolution. Google Chrome is giving me troubles. Okay, where's the shapeways? Aha, it's here. Alright, so let's check in the 3D tools again now that we've scaled it down. I believe that should have scaled it down. And let's see how we're dealing with wall thickness. He's doing the test right now. Click on it to double check. Sean Lake 3D, thanks for joining. Loving the colors on this. Thank you, mate. I don't know why this is taking so long, but Shapeways, I guess, can take some time to test it out. How you been? I've been good, man. Just hustling away, doing my thing. I get in like a few projects every week. I'm getting hit up about like 10 to 20 projects, of which only about, I don't know, 2 or 3 actually happen. But I'm pretty used to the freelance life now. With this kind of thing, I feel like it's ideal because I want to build my own universe and world around these Fungisaurs, which takes time. So you need to put in the time. But aside from work, I'm not too bad. I just came back from a trip to Colorado, hanging out with my cousin on 420, a little 420 camping trip, and going to Boston next week for the Formlabs Summit. So that should be really fun and interesting, and I've got some friends in Boston, so I'm going to go meet up with them. Been a while since I saw some of them. Just inflating the sail here because I know I did that for the final prototype version. And let's go ahead and add some scales. So we created one scale, which is this one. See what happens when we draw it on. Oh, it's in curve mode right now, which is why it was taking so long. Interesting way of doing it. We can kind of add a whole row, a curve of them, but we'll see. Classes here in Unreal today, doing admin work, but all is well. The Locutus model. Yeah, man, don't worry about it. I've got so many projects that I do at a time. Like I'm working currently on like 10 different projects at a time. So I totally understand when it takes time to get it done. I'm going to turn curve mode off and just kind of draw them in by hand. Because I want to be able to mess with the scale. Some of them should be small, some of them should be large, some of them should be overlapping, others not so much. And I like the idea of actually these scales end up becoming the turkey tails. So we can make them really, I don't like that one. Give them a reason to have scales right there. Some really, really small ones. Whoa, now that. And ZBrush is chugging right now. Not sure why. I like the sporadic spacing. If I add too many of them, it kind of becomes overwhelming. Okay, let's see if Shapeways did its thing yet. All right, here we go. So now that we've scaled it down, you can see with the thickness tester that a lot of these areas that are too thin are just not good enough. They're less than 0.7 millimeter. So I think there's a non-heat map view. But this is basically, my point was just you can go to Shapeways, test the minimum thickness of your materials for 3D printing. Alright, so I'm going to continue adding more scales like that. Maybe some all the way down the tail, kind of like a crocodile. Who's to say that crocodiles didn't evolve from Dimetrodons? We just don't know. Now this may end up just not working at all, and I might can the scales, but it's good to test. And it definitely does help in adding that scale, resolution, and detail. I also think we should maybe add some different types of scales. Right now we're just adding these same single shapes, but maybe we should try some other ones. If at any point you want to adjust the scale, you can come over to it, select it with the transpose tools, and scale it individually. It's been a minute since I saved, so I'm going to save again. Alright, I'm going to select all of those scales. And I'm going to drop a color on them. Maybe a lighter color. Add some more all the way up here. I'm not sure what to do with the head just yet. I might try a different type of scale for the head. Let's create a different type of scale so we're not just working with the singular kind. I'm going to go back to my scale that I had created over here and modify it. I'm going to create a much rounder, broader one. And I'm not going to have it stick out so much along the back. I'm going to have it stick out just along the middle. Now if I was being smart about this, instead of keeping this 8,000 polys, I might actually try to adjust it a bit, or basically decimate it so it's smaller. I'm going to take my pinch brush, pinch it over here like that. There's the bottom of my scale, there's the sides. That's looking right. Z plugin, decimation master, pre-process current, decimate current. So now it's about 1,000 polys. That'll be a bit better. Alright, so I'll switch over to my insert mesh, and I'll go to create insert mesh brush, append. And now basically it's added that scale to my previous insert mesh brush. So I can press M and switch to the new scale, and now with the same insert mesh brush I can draw on a completely different looking scale. Adjust the depth again because this one is a bit deeper. And I'll go ahead and add in a bunch of these. Uh-oh. Gotta be careful with the scale still. Don't want it to get too large too quickly. And changing the type of scale now I'm using adds variation. Variation is good. That's really how you get to something feeling organic, is just adding a lot more variation. I like it. A lot more dragon-esque. But I'm gonna keep messing with it, keep messing with the colors. Add some scales on the face too, so it's not just only a feature that's on the body, but also on the head as well. And rule of thumb is you want to add detail where you want to draw the viewer's eye. So in this case, I want to draw the viewer's eye to the eyes. Maybe the top of the head in general. I'm changing the direction I'm dropping this as well. And the closer I pack them together, the more it feels like it's actually like scaled skin, not just scaled horns or something, you know? Kuma's at it again. Can't blame him. He's got those satellite ears, so he hears a lot more than I do. Whoever asked how to add scales, this is your fault. Now I'm in Scalomania mode. You'll notice I'm not really adding them to the other side. Just because I want to see how they play out on the one side first. If I don't like it, I can just stop. Oftentimes you're going to have to zoom in and redo a bit. Might have to change the name of this character from Salamander to Scalamander. Alright. So there's a look with a whole bunch of scales. So this character kind of evolving from this small version to this bigger one. It's all scaled out. And we have the other side where we can see it without scales. So I don't know. I'll have to sit on this and let it roost a bit. Think about it. We've got another half an hour on the stream, so I'm going to keep playing around. Might want to incorporate some of the coloration of these turkey tails into these scales. So that might be a great way to help sell that idea. So I'm going to do that next. Let's save. Double check if y'all have any questions from the restream chat. Sean's saying did something similar with snake scales for a ring. Yeah, that's the best way of doing it. Yeah, Salamander is one of my current toys, so basically the smaller version like this, but with bigger eyes, kind of like that. So that's one of my current toys. Bunch of photos on it on Fungisaur's Instagram. If you go to instagram.com Fungisaurs. If you want to follow me on here, appreciate it. So there's the Salamander. There's a 3D print of it that's kind of large. Some other ones. Paradox. C-Rex. So these are FDM prints actually. And the reason you don't see that many build lines is I just did a layer of resin coating on top called XTC 3D. So you scroll down here. So there's the actual Salamander toy that you can get online on Fungisaurs.com. There's a print that we're taking some pre-orders on right now. Yeah. We'll drop this in the restream chat. If you want to follow me on here, appreciate it. All right. Let's keep the ball rolling. It's always good to take your eyes off of something and then come back to it fresh. Switch to my standard brush, and I'm going to turn off Z-Add so I can focus on mRGB, and I'll pick out some of the colors on here. That way I can kind of draw on them. I'll select my mesh here, mask it off so I'm not painting on it at all. You know what, I might actually split unmasked points. That way all the scales will be on their own layer. I can paint them at ease. Just go ahead and do this a bit haphazardly and quickly. My color spray on. You can try out different colorations for these. Uh-oh. Switch gears to maybe this lighter brown. Switch gears again to maybe this purple. This is a great thing about designing concept creatures. You can get a bit magical. And that would be so freaking magical if done well. That's the key, really, is doing it well. Okay. I'm going to use the white, and I'm going to try to go to the ends of these scales. At least the horned ones. And adding a little bit of white highlight. A bit of extra handwork always shows. Kind of almost like these are like all the scales are little turkey tails. Let's go in here with a few different colors. Do some banding. It's not always going to work, and we don't want to overdo it, but it might be fun. Kind of the point of ZBrushing for me is the ability to have fun and experiment and get creative and just create, make stuff. I don't need a lot of time. I just need a couple hours, at least a week, to feel like I'm still a 3D artist. I'm still making things. So I don't know about you, but I've never seen anything like that before, which to me is a good thing. It's a mark of originality, a mark of something worth pursuing. It's kind of almost like a character covered in seashells or something, you know? It's pretty. I'm gonna switch gears to the salamander below. Pick out a darker color. Lower my RGB intensity. Go with the color spray. And see about adding a bit of darkness under where those scales come out of. See if that helps. Meh, not sure if that helped. I'm gonna go back and see. Whoa, there. Gotta be careful how far back you go in ZBrush history too quickly. Nah, it just adds too much contrast, so I don't need that. Okay, gonna pull up the Dimetrodon reference again. Been a minute since I looked at that. There it is. Yeah, and since these creatures lived so long ago and we have no idea what their skin, you know, textures really look like, you can really have some fun with it. I'm gonna try to give them a few little spots here and there. Kind of like stripes or banding, but not quite. Uh-oh, what's happening here? The sails? Yeah, no, they're fine. Let's go with lighter color again. Just trying to think about how to make this creature look more ethereal. I'm gonna go in and reinforce some of these shadows. Deciding whether that gullet should be darker or lighter. Uh-oh. Switch to flat shade, which is good sometimes, but not right now. Pull out some highlights as well. So I think I do want to pursue the scale direction. Just a matter of figuring out the best way to do it. And that'll just take a little bit of trial and error. Just want to make sure I'm not overdoing it. But best way to find that out is by overdoing it. Now Dimetrodon had teeth, and my character does not. It's very beaky. But I don't know if we want to add teeth. One way to find out, by actually adding teeth. I'm going to go to my PMD Sphere 3D again. This one's already been decimated. That should be fine. Deformation, size it down a couple times so I can have a big brush. Let's turn it into teeth. Let's see, I want to look at an actual skeleton of Dimetrodon. So I'm not just drawing teeth based on how I feel like it, but I'm doing it based on some sort of data. Alright, got a question. Orisen is asking, why don't you have perspective on in ZBrush? So generally perspective is good for me when I'm ready to do some lighting and shading, or kind of, I guess it really depends. Like if there's a camera, then I'll use perspective mode. But majority of the time I tend to sculpt in orthographic. So it's kind of more of a preference than like a solid fact, but there's a lot of reasons why having perspective mode can be a problem. So if I turn perspective mode off and say I want to clip the bottom of these feet to make sure that they're completely flat on the ground. Now when I hold shift, I should be able to snap to the sides. But when I snap to the sides and clip here, you'll notice it looks like it's flat, but if I turn perspective mode off, it's not really flat because it was higher in the front than it was in the back. So it's kind of at a weird angle. Whereas if I have perspective mode turned off and then I do a clip, then it should actually be clipped. You know? So that's the reason why, you know, I don't really have perspective mode on all the time. Alright, back to the tooth. See, where's the skeleton when you need it? Alright, here's a good one, I think. Okay, so this looks like to me, if it comes up properly. Come on, show it. Excuse me. Darn. Aha, there it goes. Okay, so there's a row of teeth on the skeleton. So clearly, creature had teeth. So I'm gonna try to drop them in. Looks like the bottom jaw ones are pretty small. Top ones, especially near the end, since it's designed for grabbing, seem a bit larger. So let's add some teeth and see if it works. Teeth do look like they're slightly curved up at the top, but the majority of them are like just straight simple teeth. So I'm going to leave them like this and go to the top view. Top view? Probably top view. Go to my insert mesh brush and create insert mesh append. Okay. This is why I was not sure if I was going to do the top view, is because if I do it from this angle, now it'll kind of just come out. But I will lower the depth and try to see it from a top view, even if I don't have a perfectly top view. I'll make sure I'm drawing these on the inside of the mesh. And I might change the scale on them yet, but let's see. See if I even like them enough to keep them for now. Add some big old teeth here too. Kind of comical, not too scary, and that's fine with me. But I do think the teeth should be a bit larger than they are right there. They're a bit tiny. I'm going to select, invert, split hidden, and I'm going to run a deformation inflate. Just make them a bit larger or thicker. Then I might end up actually coming in to sculpt some of these and curve them. Draw them out. Maybe inflate again. Too big. Let's try 3. That's better. Yeah, so not bad with teeth. I don't think it hurts the design at all. Now right now the body of the character is a lot more complex than the face, which is going to draw our attention away from the face towards the body, maybe. It's all about having areas of rest where the eyes can land on and be calm and just focus on. So sometimes that might be a good thing. But I think this will need some more scales. Another thing I can do with the scales is kind of inflate all of them and kind of pack up the spaces in between them. I can do this subtly, or I can do this like really obviously. And that's probably overkill, but you get the idea that you can inflate the scales and it'll make them feel more tightly packed together. Yeah, subtle. I might just do overall inflate of 1, maybe 2. Alright, so a lot more work to do on this character. And I'll probably keep coming back to it here and there. I think it was a pretty successful stream session as far as playing with it and seeing how far we got. Doing some concept designing. We color the scales so that we draw attention to where we want to. So we'll see. Lots more to do. Simplify the scales too, if I want. Might be best to kind of do a mix. For the body scales, start out simple colored. And then as it grows towards the back, they become really colorful. That way we don't drown in color. All right, that is it for this week's stream. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you all next week. I'll be streaming from Formlabs HQ in Boston, so that should be interesting. Yeah, I think I'll be doing like a live scanning to 3D print demo. So if you all want to tune in next week, same time, I believe it's not going to be Thursday, it's going to be Wednesday next week. So Wednesday morning-ish, and I'll be going over some fun stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, so that's about it for this. See y'all next time. Cheers.